This is first of two readings, so the second reading will be June 10th.
If no more questions, is there a motion?
Remember, you don't have to read it. You can just say, I make the motion as written.
I like to read it.
Mr. Chair of the Affordable Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Politician. I make a motion to approve first reading of an ordinance authorizing the town manager to enter an economic development grant agreement between the town of Bluffton and 97 LLC for affordable housing located at 97 Guthrie Road.
Is there a second?
So moved. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Forrester. You can stay up there and go on to the next workshop item. I guess first on the list is reserve funds.
Yes, good evening again. So we had talked about during the budget process giving an update on our reserve policy. The policy was updated in 2021, so we wanted to give a refresher of how we developed that policy, what it's based on, and also for any of the new members of council that haven't seen this, to give them an update on it as well. So the background: in January of 2021, council requested staff to review the reserve policy. It was based on a conversation as part of a workshop discussion on the budget status. February 2021, council had a workshop on reserves specifically, where we went over the current policy and potential options for updating it. And this right here is what the policy was prior to 2021. So it's 15% of general fund expenditures for an emergency fund, 25% of general fund for an unassigned, and then there was a vehicle and equipment reserve, which was 115% of assets depreciation costs, but it was capped at $1 million. So in spring of 2021, staff conducted a risk-based reserve assessment per GFOA best practices. And in June 2021, council adopted the revised reserve policy as part of the budget. So we first looked at recommended best practices. The Government Finance Officers Association has a whole host of best practices for government finance. And the key piece of this best practice that we highlighted for you all was that the statement that the adequacy of minimum unrestricted fund balance should be based on risks that are unique to each municipality. So it identifies in the best practice that you should maintain an unrestricted fund balance of no less than 2 months. And this kind of confuses a lot of individuals when asked what the best practice is. They often cite this 2 months, but they fail to mention that it says no less than 2 months, and it goes on to specify that really your reserve should be based on the risks associated with your municipality. Your policy should define the appropriate uses, how to replenish the reserves, and what time frame, if they should go below the requirements, define appropriate uses of unassigned fund balance, and to limit those to one-time uses, assess your capital renewal and replacement needs, and consider any impacts on potential bond ratings. So we conducted a risk-based reserve assessment using the GFOA tool, and they identified risks in these categories: extreme events, your revenue stability, your expenditure volatility, leverage, liquidity, interfund dependency, your growth projections, and your capital projects. And so we assessed these risks based on what we face here at the town of Bluffton and identified those in this tool. Obviously, extreme events, you have hurricanes and flooding. We have a heavy reliance on growth revenue, which are more and elastic revenues, so revenues that can fluctuate drastically based on the economic conditions. Expenditure volatility, we have potential spikes from extreme events, but otherwise it's relatively stable. We have very low debt and sufficient debt capacity, so our leverage is in good shape and still is. Liquidity, we have significant cash flow and cash reserves, so very stable. Interfund dependency is low, but we do have general fund supports other funds for different projects and initiatives. Growth, we have a significant need for added services as we continue to grow. And we've seen that over the past few years in the budgets we've presented you all. And of course, we have an aggressive capital plan as well. So these items are scored, and then you're put into a category. So our score was a 28. We face moderate to high levels of risk, and you should consider short and informal benchmarking survey, which I'll go into in a second. Also analyze other significant risk factors and how those can be valued, and adequately cover what the survey suggests is reasonable. So in our peer comparison, we looked at some of the coastal towns, Hilton Head being the most comparable because it's right next door. We also looked at Charleston, Beaufort, Savannah, and Myrtle Beach. You can see in Hilton Head, their general fund reserve is a range of 35 to 40%. They hold an emergency reserve of $52 million. And just some history on that, for them to recover from Hurricane Matthew, it cost them $52 million. So after Hurricane Matthew, they set the policy that they would keep $52 million in reserve. But overall, all the reserves combined is 129% of the budget. Charleston, Beaufort, and Savannah don't have as aggressive reserve policies, 20, 28, and 24% respectively, and Myrtle Beach is 21.5%. One of the other key aspects that we used when analyzing our needs was we used a study out of Florida State University, and they did a study in the late 90s to quantify the cost to recover from hurricane based on the category storm. And these numbers here are adjusted for inflation since 1999. So the average cost per capita to recover from a Hurricane 1 storm was $92, and it goes up to Category 4, which is about $1,700 per capita to recover. And so what that equivalent would be for the town of Bluffton is in that last column there per each category. And we used last time Category 3 as our target because throughout history, the strongest hurricane to actually hit the town of Bluffton has been a Category 3 throughout all of history, comparing all hurricanes. We also looked at our rating agencies and the comments from rating agencies. One of the key points here is that AAA communities have an unassigned fund balance greater than 30% in almost all cases. They also look at spend down of fund balance for non-emergency purposes is looked upon negatively and could potentially lead to a downgrade. So significant draws on reserves to imbalance operations is obviously a negative, and that's the type it should be, or for non-one-time uses. There's a concern about coastal communities in general and the ability to deal with climate change and weather-related events and the disasters they cause to towns and infrastructure. And of course, there was expressed concern on our reliance on growth revenue to fund our operations. We also looked at our capital assets and what's been going on there. Obviously, we've done a lot in constructing different facilities and parks and expanding our assets over time. It's increased 116% over the past 10 years. And obviously, this would increase our need for future renewal and replacements in the out years. So we had settled on a reserve policy as outlined here. So we updated the emergency recovery fund to not just be 15% of general fund, but to reflect all governmental funds. Obviously, a disaster would impact all of our funds. So we put 15% of all budgeted government funds. Our unassigned fund balance was set at 35% of general fund. We made a major adjustment to our capital asset reserve to fund this annually at the amount of 50% of depreciation expense. And it would increase the cap to 5 years of depreciation expense. Of course, our policy specifies that any shortfalls in our reserves shall be remedied within 3 years of it occurring. And then, of course, when reserve requirements are met, the town manager may recommend use of excess funds on one-time, non-reoccurring costs. So here we have two charts. The top chart reflects our policy and then the balance at the time as of June 30, 2020. So that was before the new policy took effect. And then the bottom chart shows where we're at today and what the projection for June 30, 2025 would be. And as you all recall, the Category 3 potential impact is around $19 million. So we feel that we are covered sufficiently with our policy at 11 0.6 in emergency, and then another unassigned of 12.5. And then we also have our capital asset reserve there. And again, that policy reserve for the capital assets is that 5-year cap. So it doesn't say you have to meet that, it just says that that's the cap. And we currently sit at about 3.1 million in the capital asset reserve. So that's the history of our current reserve policy, how we got to where we are, and what our projected status is as of June 30. Do you have any questions?
Any questions, Ms. Burden?
No questions.
Mr. Hamilton?
Question, thank you.
Mr. Wood?
Yes, sir. Can you go back to the screen with the hurricanes listed?
This one?
I mean, that's, so between a 3 and a 4 is like what, 74% difference, something close to that? I mean, seeing it in black and white, it almost makes me wonder if we shouldn't be doing something like a 3.25 or 3.5. Because that's an astounding difference between 18 million to 68 million. I mean, that's a game changer. If we're budgeting based on a 3, but we ever got whacked by a 4, we're close.
Yeah, I mean, category 4s are pretty catastrophic in most instances, especially if they're a direct hit. Again, the likelihood of it making landfall in Bluffton as a category 4 is very slim. Again, it's never happened in history, or recorded history, I should say. And a category 3 has been a few times throughout history. So I think as far as when you're assessing risk and probability of occurrence, using 3 as a metric is fair. The other thing that we take into consideration is our debt capacity. So we have sufficient debt capacity to issue like a temporary assistance bond, which is what Hilton Head had to do because they didn't have sufficient reserves when Matthew hit them. So they had to issue a temporary assistance bond.
Does, in any of these equations from history, does FEMA play at all into your calculations? Because
So-
FEMA, not to cut you off,
No, you're right.
we know where FEMA is
Yeah.
these days. They're basically, they're gutting FEMA. He's already turned down one state that was actually a red state. He turned it down for FEMA assistance and some others. So it's interesting to see where FEMA may be going.
That's correct. So when we were assessing our reserve needs, we took the approach of assuming that we would not get FEMA assistance for quite some time. So the goal was to put ourselves in a position that we could respond by ourselves quickly and efficiently, and then let FEMA play out as it happens, but we wanted to make sure that we had enough available that we can respond immediately.
I wonder, piggybacking off what you were saying with this chart and Hilton Head having that case study of Matthew, which was barely a 1.
Correct.
I mean, and theirs was 52 million for barely a 1. I mean, to me, there is a big difference between that 3 million and that 52. So I do wonder if this is accurate, I guess is kind of what I'm going off of, because with Hilton Head, I'm guessing that this was not really quite accurate.
No,
Just, we just have an open conversation here because this fits right in here. It may answer some questions. When we did this, typically most towns have their own sewer, their own their roads and all that stuff. We don't. So was that liability, so to speak, calculated into these numbers?
so we discussed it. One of the things that we learned from Hilton Head when Matthew hit is initially after Matthew went through Hilton Head, the town stance was that we were only going to take care of what we own. So they weren't going to touch the POAs, HOAs, and stuff like that. But what they realized is that by not assisting those communities in recovering was impacting their tax base because they wanted to get back open. They wanted the tourists to come back. So they actually ended up spending money to assist those ultimately to get the economy back up and running, which is a big reason why their costs were so significant. So again, we took the stance of putting ourselves in a position where we could respond, even if we had to go into some of the communities and assist them. Again, I mean, as Councilwoman Burden pointed out, there was 52 million and it was barely a 2, if that, when it made landfall. And that was unique in how it hit, which is what they talk about. But I mean, that's a good example. This study was based off of hurricanes that hit the state of Florida from, I think it was 1980 through 1998, I believe it was.
Hilton Head is also so much more vulnerable than we are.
That's right.
They're gonna experience a lot more damages because of the way they.
It's an island.
Yeah.
It's no way off. Exactly. Go ahead. Dan, did you have more on it? Ms. Frazier?
So I do have two questions, Chris. So one, comes back to mitigation. So I know our, funds here are reflective of, response and recovery efforts. But I know there's also funding necessary in the preparation leading up to that. Does this total include that, or is this just response recovery?
Well, this particular study right here is just based on response recovery. It's not preparation costs, although we include in our annual budget costs for hurricane prep or hurricane season. So that's already factored into the annual budget.
And I was just saying, not just from the study, going back to the chart where you had, I think we're at 19 million, I think I saw was the
For us,
projection.
here.
Yeah.
Yep.
In our 19 mil, does this have an inclusion of like our preparation and response leading up to that?
I mean, I wouldn't say so, but this is all encompassing. So this would be available funds should we need it for any emergency purposes.
The only reason I ask that is because, it is going to be very advantageous for us to take in consideration where we are nationally and where we are statewide in terms of the normal declaration that will go into play for any type of emergency disaster, not just a hurricane, where we would kind of spend funds in advance and know that we could recoup those funds through that, knowing that that may not be an avenue here. I want to make sure that if there's a need to allocate additional funds in our reserve to cover, unanticipated costs, that we do that and do not leave ourselves or our residents vulnerable. And I know that when it comes to any type of emergency preparedness, it's not just the response and recovery, but it is, looking at things as basic as, do we have enough in funds to cover communication, to go to different areas in various languages? If we have residents who do not have transportation and it is an extreme storm and they have to be transported, do we have the funds here to be able to cover transporting people from one shelter, to the next? So I want to make sure that whatever, as we're looking at this and having this conversation, if there is a recommended, amount here that's taken into consideration some of those costs, that we do have that there and are not scrambling in the event that something does happen.
I mean, those specific costs weren't pulled out and identified, but I feel confident that what we have is sufficient to address those, should it be the direction of the town manager and council. We also are sharing some of those responsibilities with the county. The county is primarily the lead in a lot of those, so there's also shared resources as well. And all those are factored into the annual planning that we go through, or that chief and the emergency manager go through. So I think financially speaking, I feel satisfied that we would cover those costs. I think the bigger challenge would be the logistical in getting those done.
And I know it was mentioned the last time too, so I know this is just speaking of our reserve, but is this where we did take some additional funding for like the grant money that we lost to the stormwater study that we talked about? I think it was like, the brick grant. Is this an appropriate place of like where something like that wasn't funded, that we were relying on, that it would be pulled from here to be able to cover that cost? Or that's something separate?
Stormwater has their own fund balance and reserves, which is not reflected here. So there is fund balance in stormwater fund for needs related to those specific types of studies. And I think there are some other grant opportunities that Felicia is currently exploring to help supplement some of those lost funds as well.
Just want to make sure, like, if there is a need to cover something that wasn't covered, that we're giving the departments those resources.
Yes, thank you.
And I would think too that our insurance, I'm sure we have very good insurance, so we should be I'm assuming that we're covered pretty good for whatever can be covered.
Yeah, insurance is always tricky in natural disasters, but yes, we are insured. We're actually looking to improve our insurance as well. But yeah, that is available to look at as well.
To go along with Councilman Frazier's question, this is where some of the funding that we're using for land acquisition is coming from as well. So we are pulling for some important projects that council has determined.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Any more questions? All right. I guess we'll move on to presentation from USCB Bluffton Ambassador Program. Ms. Sarah.
Hello, good evening, everybody. How are you? So my name is Sarah Beachkowski. I'm the Executive Director at USCB for the Center for Low Country Hospitality Education, but we're here tonight to talk about the Bluffton Ambassador Program. We visited with y'all back in November with strategic planning, and we're here again to answer any questions that you may have about the proposal that we have going forward for the 25-26 year. And I will briefly go over some high points that we've gotten. Myself and Mr. Ramsey are here. He's our assistant director this evening, along with Dave Hall, the head of grants from the university. So if we have any questions, we can answer those. But the program was established in 2017. I came on late in 23 and have been here. And since then, under the new leadership, we have accounted for 25% for all the ambassadors trained. So we've seen an increase. We're returning to a post-pandemic operational plan, meaning headed back face-to-face as opposed to virtual. People want the training face-to-face. We're still holding it virtual. We had the opportunity to meet with Miss Evans and go to the Carriage House earlier this year. Looks like the Squire Pope Carriage House will serve as a place that we, as well as here in Town Hall, can go face-to-face. We've also been asked with the Bluffton Inn as a place to have a home in order to train for the Bluffton Ambassador Program so they can be consistent locations. We're also looking for other areas throughout the town to host and to boast, to show the nature and the heart of the Low Country. We're on track to hit 500 certified in terms of Bluffton ambassadors and 100 trained in this past year. What we would like to do moving into the next fiscal year is to continue to increase our engagement, specifically returning to face-to-face, having those consistent locations. We would also like to double the number of sessions which are posted in our current MOU from 3 to 6, if that. We would also like to pilot some junior programming as well. We've done that on the island, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. We would also like to increase our social media and collaboration for marketing with chamber and town efforts in order to increase that engagement. And with the junior and the middle school, and I can go ahead and say the high school programming as well, but we had high school juniors and seniors on site at USCB previously, and they engaged in what I would call the adult and the professional programming because they are part of our workforce here. So we are working to engage them and educate them at that level as well. But for the junior and the middle school programming, we did pilot a program this year based on 4th grade South Carolina social studies standards on the island specifically, targeting ecology, culture, and the history of the local area. We would like to develop and design that, particularly for Bluffton. We had approximately 100 4th graders and worked with them throughout the week, and that was a lot of fun. We created an original workbook, and it was piloted working with the principals and their teachers. I've got a lot of reverb, sorry, I probably don't need that. You guys know me as a teacher and a coach. I probably don't need to stand around that. So we would like to increase that here in Bluffton. We thought it was great, and we want everyone to be proud of the town that they are from in the heart of the Low Country. With the middle school, we created a trivia game to play with them in alignment with the middle school. And the last thing that we've talked about that we spoke about in the fall would be a contract extension for the MOU. Well, that doesn't pertain to budgetary requirement. What that does is it opens the door for something within our grants department to keep the account open and rolling. So it's not every year open and closed, and then we have to open it again at the level at Columbia. So we're having to open and shut an account and then create a risk account, roll over, and then start again annually. So the budget can always be changed and revisited. This is more of what I would call an administrative extension to help all of us work more smoothly annually, year to year. So, as I've said, we'd like to move from 3 to 6 sessions. With session breakdowns that we would be looking at specifically would be targeting certain businesses in the area, whether they would be hospitality, hotels, resorts, any gated community sessions. I had the opportunity to visit with Pinecrest earlier in the year. In their homeowners association, they were able to bring a group together in their own clubhouse and get on their calendars. I've had the opportunity, we met with Colleton, 3 weeks ago, if that, and they're interested in hosting something. So again, a lot of times it's easier to go to them than bring everyone in. It's also easier for the marketing and collaboration to get on their calendar. The same with Sun City. I was able to go out and work with them. While I understand they're not within the town limits, they also consider themselves Bluffton and new to the area and very proud of the area. Virtual sessions and general sessions, again, the virtual sessions could be held after hours, which we're hosting now. The general sessions, we could discuss and see what meets the best needs of the community, so long as we can host them, one, I would say in June, July, and August, in air conditioning. So people are amenable to that. In our beautiful fall and spring weather, we'd love to host them outside at parks with pop-up screens, and we're not imposing a cap on those. As many people that would like to come in and sign up. One of the things that we have done since we've taken over, Trey and myself, is we've streamlined this for reporting. So we're using QR codes and technology platforms to record. So we've taken away some of that paper-based. So it's much easier for people to sign in, check out, and give us their feedback. So we can utilize that. And then piloting in the spring of 26, we would hope to be with the junior ambassador programs, with the elementary and the middle school, so we could work together again with the town and the council and the opening of the cultural center with the Gullah Geechee Cultural Center and the various organizations throughout the town to make sure we pull in specifically the messages that we want to send to our students, as well as the overall presentation. But it takes time. I've always been taught that you can't have perpetual advancement without perpetual assessment. So we want to annually take a look at that. We did this last year with Annie Evans and Debbie, your communication director, who sat down with us and reviewed it and had their permission and approval, and we carried forward with what we were presenting. Again, with the addition, we'd like to add a Facebook and an Instagram presence for the Bluffton Ambassador program specifically. We'd like to add that technology component, which is part of, we've asked for an increase in the grant of about $7,500 to focus with our staff and with technology so we can make that improvement. So it's high level quality film, so we can use that for marketing and education. As we all know, people, they stare at their phones, they get quite a bit of information from them these days. You don't see TikTok up there because the university does not allow that. So that would not be a platform that we would be able to utilize, but I wanted to touch on that in all seamlessness if anyone had a question about that.
Questions, Ms. Frazier?
I do have a question. So for the entire program, I know you stated a desire that you're going to be reaching out to various organizations as you guys are kind of tailoring it to make it a little more reflective of Bluffton. Currently, who is in charge of the content that's shared in in the ambassador program?
Myself and Mr. Ramsey, along with working with Ms. Evans, who was our point of contact, as well as Debbie, your communications director. As we go out and we research, we come back, we utilize, we pull from the town website, we pull from historical documents. We've gone to the carriage house, we've met with your historian, we were out here, had a wonderful tour. We continue to work with him as well. We'd like to go on more tours. We would like to work with more members of the community.
I would definitely, thank you for the presentation. I would definitely encourage you all to do that, and I love that you have an intent to do it, only because I know our brand ambassador program currently as is isn't very reflective of all of Bluffton. And some of the information that has been shared or is available online has been a very limited, skewed view of that. And I know I've had individuals who have attended the ambassador program and have shared some of their discontent in the information that was shared. And to give an example for those who might be unfamiliar, I believe there was someone from Mitchellville presenting and then someone from the USCB ambassador program. And when the message talked about what happened after the Civil War and those who were recently freed, well, where they were creating towns and building schools and churches on Hilton Head, the message was that the recently enslaved in Bluffton wandered aimlessly with nothing to do because plantation life ended. And that's not accurate, yeah. And
I can promise you that hasn't been under my leadership. Since I've taken over, we don't even speak to that in regards to, we discuss Mitchellville if it's mentioned, but no, I can assure you that under my leadership, since I've taken over, that has not been the case, and I will happily sit down and bring what we have torn down and rebuilt in the past year and share that with you. So I apologize if that was ever spoken, but I can assure you that has not been spoken under what we have delivered.
I would
You can see the shock on my face.
I see that. Well, you know the shock on mine because that someone sent me a direct message as they were sitting there listening to that, and this was 2 months ago. And it wasn't that you all were speaking on Mitchellville and Bluffton. There were two representatives at this particular program, and the representative from Mitchellville spoke about Mitchellville, and then someone spoke on Bluffton, and when they were given the segment portions of Bluffton, when they got to that particular portion about the transition after the Civil War, that was the mention and the only mention of African-American or Gullah existence in Bluffton. And so when that was shared to me, I immediately was like, well, that's something we need to address because that's not only accurate, but you can imagine from a representation standpoint how that, would come across to those who are descendants of that. So when we're sharing Bluffton information, we want to get the whole story and not just that's been told from one lens.
No, absolutely, and if we can speak after this, or I'll follow
Sure.
up with you, because we haven't presented with anybody from Mitchellville.
I would love.
So I would like to know what presentation that was at and who presented themselves from USCB. Because that was not us.
I will share that with you.
Please. I would very much like to know, because we would like to know who's presenting that information.
Absolutely.
The only two individuals that do present are Mr. Ramsey and myself. So, are there any, thank you, and that is alarming, so I appreciate that. We do have our feedback from the presentations, and we can share that when we get back to the office, if you'd like to see that. Moving forward, because I know in the effort of time, this just speaks to the junior programming. And then I will get to the last slide. And this is just the contract extension again. It doesn't reflect the budget. It's just in order to keep that line item open through the university without opening and closing basically what would be a checking or a credit line every year annually and opening a new line for administrative purposes. And moving from a 32.5 current budget to 40,000, which is an increase of $7,500, predominantly so we can dedicate staff and technology needs to assess, research, and continue with that redesign to create that with those man hours and the benefits needed associated with that cost so we can continue to move forward. Again, that's our projected. We're open for thoughts and discussion and any questions.
Just a couple of minor things. I'm assuming you do a survey of those who've participated. Okay, and maybe at some point, maybe you have in the past, share that with the council.
We can
okay.
send that through, I believe, Ms. Evans, we can send the year-to-date. We've had that as our point of contact.
Sure, you do a consultation on it where we don't have to look at every one.
Oh, no. We'll send it through.
And then the other question I had, and I think you touched on it briefly for a moment, because I was looking at your website on Facebook while you were talking. I was looking to see if there was a video. Do you have any kind of a video maybe showing the highlights of what you're presenting or anything like that?
We are working under that. It's a great question. So under this last fiscal year, something happened that we had to do with a technology change. Prior to when Mr. Ramsey and myself took over, we had an external website that was not under the University of South Carolina. And we needed to bring our website under the University of South Carolina, and that's taken a technological rebuild on their platform. So we are currently still rebuilding under the USCB platform for both the Island Ambassador and the Bluffton Ambassador program. So they are in works along with our tech department, and that's been ongoing since we've been there. So we hope to put program highlights. We do have a page, it's brief at the moment, but we like to continue to expand upon it. What I'd like to say is we'd like to give highlights without giving it all away. So we get people to sign up. We do have our online sign up for that, so people could sign up, but we would very much like the town of Bluffton to send that out, and we would like to get our social media page started for Bluffton Ambassador so we could send it out and people could sign up for virtual or general sessions.
Thank you. Mr. Hamilton?
Is Bluffton the only municipality that you are requesting fund from?
No, sir. We also work with the town of Hilton Head.
Okay.
What do they pay?
$235,000.
And how many?
It's a vast difference.
Huh?
I said it's a difference.
That is a big difference. Why?
Our MOU is written with them in a different characteristic in regards to we are business oriented and aligned to their resorts and training with induction and new hire for many of their resorts and hotels and restaurants. We're embedded with their new hire. Their mission and vision had been to educate those coming within. The mission and vision when I inherited this program was for anyone within the town of Bluffton. Also, the town of Hilton Head is that. We do offer general sessions. But along with that, we also run quality management, which I like to call our secret shopper program. And we provide event management services in terms of evaluation and third-party survey data for ATAX grants. So as part of something that we run with the grant that we work with them, we can be hired out to create surveys and then create analytical reports that third-party groups can utilize to go in front of the town council to assess and ask for ATAX funds. They also have endorsed the creation and development of junior programming.
Can you, it's a follow-up to Mr. Wood's question, but can you show us the success of your program at some point?
Absolutely. Yes, I'd reached out to Ms. Evans to ask what other data that you may need tonight. So she had said, go ahead and bring this, but no, we can go ahead and send through since Mr. Ramsey and myself, I would like to present that to you because that is what I can discuss and take ownership of. What was done prior to my arrival, and we can share the presentation as well, but I would like to be able to present that from late end of year 23 through 24 to now, with your approval.
I would appreciate that, and I know you're asking for a period of 2 to 5 years. That part, I think we need to have more detail about the program before we agree to a contract.
Okay.
For me, okay.
Absolutely, and again, that doesn't touch on the physical budget, but just keeping the line open from the administrative policy.
Okay.
The budget is open for variation on an annual basis.
Sarah, you did a very good job, and your not only your work there, you seem to have a passion for it. I like that.
I have been very blessed, and Mayor Toomer's known me for years. I had the pleasure to work with his daughters when they were at Bluffton as a coach. I am not from here, but I am very, very proud of the Low Country. I've been here about 20 years, and I have been an educator, Councilwoman Frazier, and a coach.
That's not good.
She's a good coach, so.
Great educator, too.
So I am very, very proud of this area, and I consider it home, and I have a 10-year-old daughter, Lord help me, and she's a Low Country girl, so I am very proud of it.
Thank you.
Ms. Carter?
My last question is, remind me, you said you're hoping to do 100 for next year, or is that going to finish up this year?
We would like to finish up as it rolls into July. We were a bit pushed back, and what we're finding is with training and needing to get face-to-face, it's taken longer to get on calendars. What we're finding is we should be nearing 100. We've got another session planned in late June, coming up in mid to late June. The numbers for the virtual sessions are slowly going down. People want face-to-face, and as the school year ends, we expect that to raise. So we're learning as we're going. With the carriage house, for example, they can only host 6 people. We've spoken with the owners of the Bluffton Inn. They've graciously volunteered to host us, but that's only up to 12. So we would love to use the facilities here when we can get on the schedule. Or, you know, I hear you have a captive audience when you have court. We could always come in and present.
I would love to see that, you know, when you talk about $40,000 a year and we're talking about 100 people, like I would love to see that number increase with that amount of money. I mean, I think going into the gated communities, as you said, Joe, we're doing is a great, because I feel like most of them have a meeting a month and are looking for speakers. And so I think to get capped, you know, a large amount of people, that's a great idea.
And those have been our larger audiences. When we met with Ms. Evans and Debbie, your communications director, we had asked for your points of contact to leverage that information. And at one point, there was a conversation for us to follow the mobile town halls, but my understanding that didn't necessarily work out. That was the original intent. So we're still working to follow up to try and get on the best radar. And I would hate to say the coattails, but obviously the endorsement of the town, and make sure that we are contacting the correct people on behalf of the program and the town to let them know that we are a town endorsed programming. So we can continue to work with them as well. And obviously with the technology, that takes a minute to catch up and rebuild to make sure we're producing the highest level and quality programming that we can to get that, and along with the students and the schools. So those are things that we are looking for. The other thing that we have found would be getting into Bluffton and May River High School as well, because one of, as you had asked, who else are we working with? One of the points of feedback that we received from the town of Hilton Head is it's very hard to pull people off the floor, right? In the town of workforce and staffing, we have so many high school students that are working out in our industries, and they really are the face in the town and the greatest assets that we have here that can speak on behalf of who we are and why we're the heart of the Low Country when they interface with everyone, because they are. They can be proud of where they're from. It used to be a very small, close-knit community. It's still a close-knit, but large community now, much larger than what it used to be. So being able to go into the schools is also a goal, because you can capture several hundred students. For example, we captured 300 students at Hilton Head Island High School within a several-day period, who were all working through career and technical ed, working out in the workforce. So that's a quick and easy. I would like to say we can get to them because they're in a contained atmosphere, but we know that they're also coming and giving back to the community as well. And it's something that they know that's education and they can utilize within their job. So then they feel empowered to speak about their town as well, because they may or may not be getting it from their high school education.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
We'll, you know, we got our budget, so we'll discuss it and talk about the contract. I didn't catch the contract part, but I guess we'll get information from staff and see what's recommended and go from there.
Great. Thank you.
Great job. Up next, we have our town manager, Mr. Spees, with our capital improvement program fund.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. So we're going to kind of knock out the next two things here together. The first is kind of some carryover items from last budget workshop, and then which is a pretty quick turnaround since we met on Thursday and we were off on Monday, and then so it's tried to get some things together as fast as we could. And then I'm going to go through that, and then we can try to go through the questions you have on that before we get to CIP, and try to do that before, I know Chris has to head out of here a little bit early. He's all dressed up, not just for y'all, but for he's got to go to another event as well. So we try to get that before he heads out. So we're at the second budget workshop. a couple things between first reading and first workshop. Wanted to highlight as it pertains to not just the budget, but also capital, is there is a increase to the consolidated budget of 2.48 that comes from increasing the land acquisition budget for the properties that we've put under contract. We're not going to be able to close on any of those before June 30th, so we'll need those monies in next year's budget. So that is an increase to carry those monies forward. And the money for land acquisition is in CIP, so you'll see that increase to CIP from first reading to carry that money as well. So overall, it's that 2.486 number. Land acquisition went up by that amount and CIP increased by that amount. They also went back with council's comments and they took the resident rates that we discussed and included property owners for rentals on that master fee schedule to be considered as residents. We have not had a chance to really do any more digging since the conversation on the affordable housing position, and conversation with Chris, what my recommendation was is to go ahead and add an FTE. There will be no funding associated with it at this point in time, but what we would do is we would put together what the position's going to do, make that recommendation, bring it to affordable housing, let them recommend to council, and then once council is good to go forward, we'll bring a budget amendment to determine, because we don't know with the job description, the pay scale, how much we need to set aside, so we'll be able to do the budget amendment once we know exactly what that cost is going to be. But the position will be there, so whenever we're ready to move forward, we won't have to amend the budget for that. We also reduced the estimated the amount that is recommended for the Palmetto Breeze, based on the conversation and some of the concerns that we have for them increasing their rates, or their recommendation pretty much doubling it. So what we recommended was to do a 30% increase over their amount from fiscal year their current budget, 24-25. That would take them up to 194,000 and change. Their current request, as you can see, is 328, almost 329,000. And so this would take them down about $130,000 over what their request was for next year. We want to kind of stop there before we go into the capital projects to see if there's any continued discussion from those items.
Questions for Mr. Wood? Mr. Hamilton?
I missed the end of the Palmetto Breeze discussion, but I think 30% wasn't quite what I wanted. I wanted a little bit more than 30% decrease, but you increase.
So that is an increase over what they received last year, which was
74 or something.
79, does that say?
179,000. What they had asked for was almost $150,000 more over that. So it's only about a $15,000 increase. And that does go along with increased costs that they have shared with Chris and I and Natalie that we feel that are justifiable versus just completely almost doubling their request.
Okay.
And they are going to, after you left, they're going to look at a different way to calculate it too, because right now it's being done off population.
Not ridership.
Yeah, and didn't make much sense to me, so I asked the question, the population, we didn't double our population in 1 year, even though the money request was not quite double, but close. So in the future, they're going to bring us some more information, better information as far as riders. We'll have a little more, I think we'll feel a little clearer on what we're paying for.
And Councilman Frazier brought up for them to consider some alternatives for, I think she's brought it up every year to them, to look versus just the continued, if it's going to be 9 people a day riding the bus, some alternatives to consider.
Okay.
Ms. Burton?
I'm good on this.
Ms. Frazier? Okay, you know where we,
All right. There's always something from the first budget that we bring to the second, so just wanted to make sure we went over that. So now we're going to get into the capital projects, which is where we spend a lot of our money each year, and we try to do projects that make the community happy and make council proud. So as you can see, some of the programs that we have in there will be continuation of some projects that are going to be starting, or some that are going to be kind of straddling the fiscal year. The new Riverside Barn Park, as well as the barn. The playground's done, but we've got the barn and some other things will continue forward. You will have, actually, I think they approved Sarah Riley Hooks last month, or is it on, y'all approved it last month, right? So that's getting ready to start. New River Trail is what's coming in June. That's on the draft agenda to award both phases of the new Riverside Trail. And then we have 4, 5, and 6 that y'all have awarded that it will continue on to the next fiscal year. And then you'll see some of the other projects that are continuing on or that will be new.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Boundary Street gets started when?
That's supposed to start next fiscal year. That's spring of next year or fall, end of this year?
It's gonna be the end of next year, because we're still working on easements.
For the end of the fiscal year, so spring of about a year from now. Hopefully sooner, but next spring.
Dan will be,
Is there a reason that's taking so long?
yeah,
Oh.
Dan.
Well,
I know
we're getting
we've
ready
been
to start
talking about
Pritchard
it.
Street, so we didn't want to have multiple streetscape projects going on at one time. We didn't want to have multiple roads being impacted by streetscapes. So we've timed these out so that Pritchard Street will happen. This is getting ready to come to y'all for award this summer. And then we would move to
Bridge Street, phase 2.
Yeah, phase 2 of Bridge Street. Then we would go Boundary and then Calhoun, and we would only have one streetscape project going at a time. So we wouldn't have multiple roads or business areas impacted at the same time.
But on that same token, on that same line, Stephen, can't we go ahead and get our easements and be working?
We're working on that now.
I mean, I understand not blocking the roads, but if we got the money figured out, that's normally supposed to be the hardest part.
But that's what they're working on now.
We
So
shouldn't-
I'm signing easements on Boundary Street now.
So, yeah, so I'm just saying so that we don't go push this thing out another 5 years or 10 years. And it's, you know, it's just something that everybody asks about, and we've been supporting it for a long time. So I think, let's don't wait until we finish Pritchard Street to start getting easements on Calhoun
Oh,
Street.
no, sir, no, sir.
You know,
I'm going to use
I know
Councilor
they've already-
Hamilton's
like I said,
words the other night. I'm going to use Councilor Hamilton's words the other night. I'd like to see it while I'm still here.
I'd like to see it before he moves too.
Like I said, they're already bringing me easements to sign for Boundary Street. So they're already in the process of getting those ahead to get ahead. I know, I don't know if they've met with your church yet or not, but I think they've reached out to y'all about the easements for the parking up there for the public parking spot, or whichever church, the other one, Cornerstone.
That's not my church. I mean, that's holding 7, it's not. the church.
Holding 7, sorry. And then, I know they've been working with, Hayward House and others, but like I said, I signed an easement, I think just today or last week for
yeah,
one.
Boundary Street should be the easiest street we have.
Yeah, the hardest is gonna,
We need energy and undergrounding, so that's another piece of it. It's not only construction, but we need exhibits from them so that we know exactly what easements we need to ask for on private property. So it's coordination with the utility as well.
Are they doing?
It's coordination with the
we're pulling
utility.
teeth.
Also.
We're pulling teeth.
Well, that's what-
Dominion
that's
is
what
not
y'all
the
gotta
most,
tell us.
Dominion is not the most cooperative company that we've ever dealt with.
But they should
And we're
be.
still pulling teeth, but we're getting there. The hardest one that we're gonna do is Calhoun. And that is just because of the number of businesses that are on there. And that one's gonna be done in sections as we go through, or we're working to figure that out as we go now. But that, because of the amount of stores and the traffic that go up Calhoun, that's gonna be our toughest project.
Well, I just noticed, seems like more and more every day, because I go up and down Boundary Street a lot. Our sidewalks there are terrible.
Oh, yeah. And we need to cold pack already what we already cold packed earlier.
What's tightened my mind and made me pay really close attention is sometime I might take a boat up to Nickel Pumpers to get gas in it or whatever. And you're coming back, if there's 2 or 3 people on the sidewalk and another vehicle coming the other way, you know, you have to almost scrub the sidewalk to keep in your lane, because that lane's not much. And I see it as a safety issue that needs to be, we need to get it done as soon as possible. Just
Do you need any help from council with putting a little,
Dominion or anybody that we
Everybody,
can
you know,
help
at
with?
Dominion's Arms, that's always helpful.
well, I mean, do we need to send a letter or something? I mean, sometimes we send a letter with all of our signatures.
We've
on
got time right now, but if we get to that point, we may bring and have council adopt a resolution asking for them to expedite.
There's another issue on Boundary Street, which is, water.
And that's what, this will put drainage system in on Boundary as well.
How long are you expected that project to take, do you know?
I think it's 18 months, 12 months.
Could be a year.
Yeah, 12 to 18 months.
But we already funded that last year.
Well, we'll go through, y'all are getting ahead of me.
Oh, sorry.
We'll get there. Yes, this has the funding in there for that project as well. So 26 proposed consolidated budget, just a reminder, as I mentioned on the slide before, it is a slight increase because we're carrying forward for the land acquisition. This is where the funds are coming from. We talked about this at the first workshop and the first budget presentation. This is the general fund funds going in, the hospitality fund funded projects, the local accommodations tax, as well as stormwater and our debt service. So now we're going to go through the actual fund. As I mentioned, it's got a slight increase now. The CIP budget makes up the largest part of our overall budget. It's about a third of our town's budget. We use several guiding documents. We use our strategic plan, our comp plan, our different master plans or comp plans that we have to cover like the Old Town, corridor, neighborhood plans, and so forth to help guide the projects. We do a review of current needs and available funding sources, which funding is always one of the biggest things as we're trying to complete projects without having to do multiple phases sometimes. It's having the funds to complete them and having to prioritize if we want to do a project over another. That's where 3 comes in with the prioritization at the strategic planning workshop, just discussing with council to see what any priorities they have going into the next 2 year or the year. And then again, we go through all the different work to make them happen. So this takes where the revenue comes from and kind of shows that as a pie chart as well as those overall numbers. And this tells you where they're going. So you can see for this year, our largest is actually land acquisition. Just like I said, we have a lot under contract and we're needing to move that money forward into this year to accommodate that. You can see that represented on the right. It's total about $9.7 million. Next one is park projects, which is usually our largest. That number's down a little bit because we've completed the playground at New Riverside, which was a large project, as well as the splash pad, which is another large project. Then you've got stormwater and sewer projects, followed by road. And then we've got facilities, economic development, and some others. This tells you where they're at. As you can see, there's, with the street projects, some of the other projects, Old Town is a hub, and then you can see them scattered throughout the town with Buckwalter, New Riverside, and some other areas across the town. Again, that just gives you a kind of a zoomed in of Old Town since they were a little hard to read on the previous one. All right, so now we're going to get into the different areas of capital projects that we have. So the first one's economic development, housing, and land acquisition. So this is what is recommended for the 26 budget. You can see the finish of the Buckwalter Place Multi-County Commerce Park. That is finishing that overall project as well as finishing out the building. That is the project in red on the bottom. Completion of the affordable housing project that we're constructing at 1095 May River, as it will continue on past July 1. The rest of that money will come out after that point in time. And then again, the big chunk is land acquisition. So these are the different capital improvement for facilities. Okay, so now we're getting into facilities. So you can see in here, we have the law enforcement center. That is the back parking area. If you remember when we did the space needs, they had talked about an area for them to store cars as well as put out their exercise where they do their PT and all of that. It also includes, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's got an HVAC unit replacement in it, or is that next year? That's the following year, okay. You can see the Sarah Riley Hooks Cottage, that's a renovation of it, continuing on into next fiscal year. As part of the facility studies, we did an ADA compliance of all the buildings the town has, so they've recommended some improvements to make sure that the town's facilities and amenities are ADA accessible. So that is a new project going into next year, is to make those improvements on town project facilities. We also have the new Riverside Barn event lawn, which is the gazebo that we workshopped with y'all, I think it was about 6 months ago. Went through a couple different options to put out right in front of the barn so that you can have concert events either facing out onto the big lawn or either facing back up towards the barn. We also have a proposed public services building down at New Riverside Barn. That is a satellite location for them to keep equipment and stuff that is needed to maintain the parks on that side of town, so that they actually have a crew or two that's going to, like, I think two-man or three-man crews that actually will report over there to get their equipment and then start their day out at New Riverside Barn. They'll cover everything like Buckwalter West for the entire town. The other crews will report back in. But mostly it's going to be a bay with 2 trucks parked in it, as well as what they need for those parks, like seed, sand, fertilizer, and everything. And it's looking to go in the very back corner, back behind, near where that church is, at the very, very back of the property, and give them access to that side of town.
And it says, and watershed facility.
So that's the one below it. That's when we went through the space needs. There was a proposal where we talked about in a couple years looking to renovate and expand the public services facility building they currently have, and potentially building the new watershed facility right there on the same premise with them. So this would be the design work for that.
Oh, you mean right here where the
current one is? Yes, sir.
So we got room to add on there is what you're saying?
We do. We have some land that goes back behind there.
Yeah, I didn't know.
And right now, the indoor space is pretty much out there. They need some covered storage and some additional space based on the needs analysis and some lay down yards, because, I hate to say it, but when the 10 acres project moves forward for affordable housing, they'll need a place to store stuff. Because right now, if there's a hurricane and we have to pull debris off the road, it's going to that 10 acres. So they'll need some lay down area there to be able to take debris and leaves and stuff until they can mulch it. So, but right now they've been using that 10-acre parcel that we have that's up on Bluffton Road.
So how much do we have behind the, I call it the old clinic building?
Not a ton, but enough where they can fit what they need. I want to say it's a little over an acre that's still left.
Yeah, I would say.
Oh,
I was looking, yeah, a little over an acre back there.
Yes, please, back there to store. That's what they're saying. I didn't realize that property was that
Yeah,
big.
it's all treed and most of it is scrubs, but we can go back so far, and then there's a little bit of wetlands, but we can go back far enough, and actually we can go back up towards, behind the dog park, back up towards the ball fields. We have land up that way as well.
At Oscar Fraser.
Mm-hmm.
Proceed, sir.
So some facility projects we are completing this year was town hall improvements. We are finally removing that off of the CIP project list. We don't have any other improvements right now that we need to make here, as well as the Squire Pope Carriage House. IT infrastructure, we continue with the public safety cameras. This has 2 different aspects of the public safety cameras in it. It has the continuation of the flock camera system that council approved. And then it also has our continued repair and replacement of the safety cameras that we have at our parks throughout town. And then again, network improvements. This is one that's normally on there every year to replace different things like our wireless access points, our phone system, which we did this past year, and then like VMware hosts and switches and stuff like that throughout the town. So even though network improvements is still on there, we completed some of the items that we had in there for this current fiscal year. Then we get to parks. So as you can see, we have park improvements, which is kind of a catch-all for just park improvements that aren't specific to necessarily one park throughout the year. You may see things like we put in like the splash pad. We may go out there where, since it opened, we put in some shade sails over there for some shade over the benches. We fixed some of the mulch and replaced it with some turf to give a place for people to go. So things like that throughout the different parks that improve the park. That's kind of the catch-all. So it may have multiple parks within there besides just one large project of a park. Oyster Factory Park is a continuation of that master plan. We're replacing the shelter that's out there. If you've been out there recently, if you haven't looked, I would encourage you to look at the footing of it. A lot of that is just being held up by the main bracket. It is rotted and not touching the ground, so we're replacing that structure to get it where it needs to be long-term, make it safe. We're also expanding the bathrooms out there to add additional stalls, and we'll start the work on preparing for the next phase, which is the bulkhead that's supposed to go around the Oyster Factory to protect from the river, keep it from washing away, and put additional parking.
When you talked about that shed, you're not talking about replacing the entire shed, are you?
Potentially. It depends on how much the cost is for the legs versus to replace the entire thing.
I mean, I would think there's a way to replace some of the legs one at a time, easy, but much less than rebuilding that entire shed.
It depends on, sometimes they surprise us with the cost to do things.
Stephen, does this 973, does that include some engineering design or whatever for the seawall that we've been talking about?
It starts that process, yes. Isn't that right, Pat?
Yes.
So the engineering, yeah.
Design in 26.
Yeah, and then the actual construction of it won't be until the next fiscal, it's proposed
But
27.
this 973 does not include the construction.
Not the construction of the seawall, no.
So what else is in this 973?
The expansion of the bathrooms, the replacement of the shelter. What else am I missing, Pat? Is that it? I know the bathrooms is the biggest part of it.
It's mostly heavy design related to the bulkhead.
Does this include the paving project that we're doing too?
That's in the budget for this year. It's out now.
It's out to bid right now.
So,
So next year would be mostly restroom construction, and then the following year would be the bulkhead and all that.
So the restroom construction is about 890,000-ish.
I don't know exactly.
no, we can get you the breakdown.
Okay, I mean, above.
No, because it also includes the shelter too, not just the bathrooms. So it's the replacement of the shelter, which may be 100, 150, plus the bathrooms, plus the bulkhead design. So the other one is the New Riverside Park barn site. That's a continuation of the barn, which will come up for completion at the end of this year. And when I say end of this year, end of 25, not the end of the fiscal year. We also have the New Riverside, New River Linear Trail. This number includes both phases because we were able to get the appropriations in the budget last year for $2 million. We're able to take what we had appropriated plus the funds that we're getting back from the power company to help upfit the bridges that are out there, repair the bridges, and do the entire trail in one phase instead of having to break it up over multiple years.
So that cost is to pave the entire
The
trail.
entire trail and rebuild the bridges. There's 2 bridges out there as well.
And the grant money is not included in that.
It is. It's $2 million of that.
So out of the town's part of it, it's about 1.6 million.
And that's started already, right? Or
It will come to y'all for award at the June council meeting. You also have the Buckwalter Place West Park improvements. If you remember back when they came and workshopped that with y'all, there were kind of 4 phases they had proposed. Y'all asked them to escalate that, so they are doing phase 1 and 2 currently. This is phases 3 and 4, which includes picnic shelters, 2 shelters as you come in, as well as putting a canopy over the stage, some cover over the stage, as well as, I think it's an not a splash pad, but an interactive fountain feature, as well as a couple other improvements on the interior. The ones they focused on now has been mostly safety, which is sidewalks around it, lighting, improving the entrances, and stuff like that. So the next one is a new project, which is the Buck Island Simmonsville Neighborhood Park, which is 140 Buck Island Road that we purchased. This is the design costs to get the park designed, engineered, and ready to go out for bid in fiscal year 26-27.
We did we talked about it. I'm trying to remember on what we wanted to see there. I mean, have we?
Council is not.
Yeah, no, we haven't.
No, we've gone and done some, we actually went and talked to the middle school and got some input from them. We're going to be bringing y'all at one of the upcoming quarterly workshops, some recommendations and go through that. And then we'll take that out to the community once council gives some input on that to get input from the community. And then before we finalize any design and begin engineering.
So this money allocated for that park is
For design and engineering.
infrastructure design. How are we going to design it before we figure out what we want to build?
That remember, this will go until June of next year. So we will start design this fall.
And then also you have to give consideration to that design proposals, a lot of times, are them looking at the land mass or whatever is there and even giving us a scope of what could go out there, or what projections are out there based on some of the preliminary information that's already been shared, knowing that parts are uplands, parts are wetlands, and the survey from the middle school and consideration of some of the other parks we've done, so.
Are we gonna be, and I'm kind of asking Pat, but in the past on parks, we've done a little on-the-site surveys, you know, with the dots. We did them over at Dubose, the barn. We did it a few places.
It's hard to do that out there because it's a
Nothing
good place
is.
to do it.
Gotcha.
We were going to do that at the Mayfest, and it got rained out. So we can do that at the 4th of July Festival instead. But we already did that with middle schoolers. We did that with the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders at Bluffton Middle and got input from them.
Okay.
We did that during Career Day. Kevin, Heather, and I, we talked to 3 different classes each. So we took the boards in there and gave them their dots and let them give us ideas and write in ideas of what they wanted to see within the park. So we already started that process.
What was the most popular aspect?
The volleyball. Surprising. Apparently there's not a lot of public places to be able to play volleyball. So that was one of the things that came in that is a walking distance for the middle schoolers, or biking distance. That came in, a field to be able to, like a multi-purpose turf field was a very high one. And like a higher level play area, like a more challenging playground type thing, like a Ninja Warrior or extreme play course was pretty high up there as well. So, you know, again, volleyball was one that we probably wouldn't have prioritized.
Let me,
And it doesn't take up much space either.
well, I was gonna say, I remember, over at Oscar Frazier Park, I guess it was last year, somebody put on a big tournament there in the middle of the open field that we have with where the walkway goes around it. They must have had 6 to 8 volleyball nets up with teams playing at the same time, ladies. And I was like, wow, okay, so it's driving the point, huh?
Yeah. I love that here that y'all are talking to the kids, because that's where I get most of my guidance, you know, because it does change from generation to generation. And if you listen to them, they'll teach you more than what you'll learn on your own.
Oh yeah, well, I'll talk about Chris since he left. But like we were talking today about the splash pad, and he took his boys, or was his daughters and boy there yesterday. And so he had we were talking about an issue with the concrete, and he gave input on it. So again, those that have kids and those that The children themselves that play in it, you can't ask for better input.
Yeah. And don't put Wi-Fi out there either, so they have to stay off the computer. They'll have to do something physical.
Tell Bridget that.
We'll ignore the next one, it's Wi-Fi at our parks. All right, so the next one is continuation of our public art program. That's just an annual, the goal is to put 100,000 in every year to continue to fund public art. New Riverside Barn Park Phase 2, trail and disc golf. So this is the Phase 2 of the trails. These are the more wooded, natural trails that go along in the back. And what we've constructed right now is Phase 1. This will be Phase 2, as well as putting in a disc golf course that goes along in there.
Speaking of the art, did anybody, which I can't speak for each of us, I liked it, but, Amiri's got his piece of art over there at the bridge. Mural. I thought it was great. It's like the one he's got over there at, Oscar Frazier Park on Pavilion there. So, just me.
If you have a recommendation for the Public Art Committee to consider, I'd be more than glad to take it to them.
Well,
Now that Chris isn't here, I can talk for him.
I think once we start our streetscape projects, like I think we've all enjoyed Greenville. I just, when I walk the streets and I see those monuments in the concrete with little historical sayings or whatever, there's so many things you can do with art. So I'm wide open to see what we come up with.
We get a statue of Dan
Make me younger.
when we're building a new sidewalk.
We'll have to draw a Fred right here because I'm gonna leave y'all in a minute.
All right. So parks. So we had a big year for parks. So these are projects that we're phasing out after fiscal year, at the end of this fiscal year. The Oscar Frazier Park Splash Pad, New Riverside Barn Park Playground, the new Riverside Village Park, and the Buckwalter Place Park Phase 1 and 2 improvements will be done by the end of the fiscal year. 3 and 4 is what I talked about starting in next year. All right, so roadways. So we have pathway pedestrian safety improvements. I know we kind of talked about that at last on. This is trying to expedite, instead of phasing it out over many years. This is a lot of projects. We are actually, we talked today about they're working to submit our permits with DOT for those rapid flashing to go at those intersections at Calhoun and Thomas Hayward. So we're working through DOT with the permitting for those right now. So we are moving those forward, but these are pathway improvements for Old Town outside of the streetscapes that we'll be doing. We have the engineering for Calhoun Street streetscape again, and to start that construction. Wharf Street lighting. We were hoping to have that done this fiscal year. We've signed the contract. We're just waiting for them to actually do it. So we're just waiting on Dominion for that. Boundary Street, that is the actual construction to finish up the engineering and construction for that, 3.359. So that's one of our larger projects going in the next fiscal year. And then we have with that, the overhead power line conversion, which Pat mentioned a minute ago, or Ken. And then continuation, that Ghost Roads, that was the lump sum that we're just continuing to carry forward as we need those funds to spend them down. Those funds that pays for the acquisition or any attorney fees that may be associated. So that's just carrying that money forward. All right, projects and roads that we were completed for this year was the first phase of some pathway pedestrians. That was phase 2. ADXS, that's mostly just crossing and redoing the grades to make sure that they're ADA accessible. The Boundary Street lighting, we completed the installation of phase 2 of the street light. So the lighting's there. Now we just need the road to match it. The next one is stormwater and sewer. We have several projects here. Continuing again of our sewer connections policy. This is a funding that we just continue forward year over year as we continue the policy forward. As people come forward and they meet and apply and they can get reimbursements for sewer, we continue to spend that money down. Phase 4, 5, and 6 is already awarded. They should be starting construction shortly, like within the next week or two. And then that it won't be done by June 30th, so that money will just continue forward until during the summer until we get it complete. Bridge Street Streetscape, that is phase 2. That is from the from Calhoun Street down to Thomas Hayward. So it will continue what we did in the first phase of Bridge all the way down. You all have workshopped that, and so last year, I believe it was, so that will be the continuation of that streetscape. And then Stony Crest Campground, that is supposed to go out to award. Sorry, they're running together on me. It's either July or August, and it has 11-month construction schedule to be complete by next summer. The way that is set up is once they actually award it, we will send all of our funding that we've obligated to Beaufort Jasper to pay for the project. So we anticipate paying that funding out here probably within August or September, and this one should hopefully not continue on beyond this fiscal year. Pritchard Street drainage improvements, again, we talked about that. That is putting drainage down this road, as well as coming back with and replacing the temporary speed bumps with permanent speed bumps and making some improvements on sidewalks along the roadway.
So what kind of drainage, I remember us talking about it, but it seems like it's been a while too.
On Pritchard?
Yeah.
Well, there is no drainage on Pritchard, so we will install drainage on Pritchard. As well as run sidewalks on this side of the road and replace those temporary speed bumps with permanent ones. We're also working with the school district, so when this project's done, the goal is for them to redo the parking lot back behind Town Hall here, their parking lot, and redo that parking lot as part of the project as well. The school district will cover that.
I don't want to prolong the meeting, but why are we putting sidewalk on that side when there's more easement requirement?
There is sidewalk on that side. We're putting sidewalk on this, so it'll be on both sides. Yes, sir. It'll be on both sides of the road.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I missed it, okay.
Yeah. So some of the ones we were able to take off was Phase 5 sewer for Buckeye and Simmonsville, as well as some previous restoration projects. You can see those outlined in there that did some preliminary design for potential future implementation that would be paid by a fee in lieu that council put in place. So if there's ever any revenue generated for that, it could potentially go for projects. And then these are, again, ones that are carrying forward that we hope to have complete. So this gives you kind of a 5-year look of the projects that we have that are for the budget for this year. The one blue you can see up there is proposed fiscal year 25-26. You can see there's a couple that 26-27 that we're kind of planning for. And then really once you get past 26-27, it starts kind of fading out. As I mentioned, one of the things that is in the general fund for this year, proposed for 25-26, is to complete a Parks and Recreation study for the entire town. So what that will do is come back as we're starting to design Buckeye and Simmonsville, as we're looking at other property throughout the town. It'll help us plan for the next 10, 15 years of park improvements that we want to see throughout the town, so we can start looking at our parks and start populating projects for the next 5, 10 years as well.
That's just something that catches my eye. The estimated cost of Calhoun Street?
Now that's split over 2 fiscal years.
So it's double that then, is what, I mean.
Well,
I'm looking
it's
down
going to be
here
about
now.
$3 million. So you can see there's 1.5 for 1 year and 1.5 for the next fiscal year.
Plus design of
Well, I mean, Boundary Street is 3.7 million. I would just, hypothetically, looking at Calhoun Street, think that that's gonna be a whole lot more than Boundary Street.
Yeah.
It's a bigger area, it's more service,
Yeah, we don't have firm numbers on Calhoun Street. That's what we estimated probably 3 years ago, based on comparison with other streetscape projects.
it just kind of caught my eye.
Yeah, once we start finalizing engineering, we'll have more update on those numbers.
Basically, what the final design tells us.
And Boundary Street construction will definitely give us real current costs instead of estimated costs so that we can project forward better.
Yeah, just remember, anything beyond the current proposed budget, we won't know until we get further along within the budget. We're projecting out 30 months ahead of time at that point, or 24 to 30 months out ahead of time. All right, so to wrap back up, this brings us back to the overall proposed consolidated budget that's been presented to council. This is our second budget workshop. Our next one would be to have the public hearing and second and final reading at the June 10th council meeting. Be glad to answer any questions that we have not discussed during the past two workshops or that council may want to go over.
Any questions from
Not on this
Steve,
side.
anybody? Got wine?
I could make up some to keep the meeting going if you want me to.
I know Fred's got a leak.
We have,
I think Fred.
I'm behind Fred.
Well,
Second.
I was just gonna say, if you do have any questions you don't want to talk about in here, you can always come and grab me, Chris, Natalie, or whoever you want to.